cruising too long, so let's just start.
Hey, we're back. This is the second episode of the Columbia Chronicles. Last time I talked about how by the way, I have all that stuff you saw in the intro, the Patreon, there's a YouTube. Get on that. Follow the stuff. Follow the YouTube videos. I'm going to post more about this sort of thing on my Patreon, more behind the scenes stuff at school, like just, problems, insecurities, things with classes, just stuff that's going on. That's more of that's going to go there than will go on the podcast. Just because it's easier to do, I can do it on my phone. I can just upload it to that. I've already started doing that, so there's stuff about it, about this Columbia experience there. So patreon.com/ATNY. Anyway, so we left off on the last one at I got in to the school and I didn't have to pay anything. There's a small loan at the end of the when I graduate, which normal, So yeah, now I'm sitting here. I am like, okay, I am going to be a student at this school, and I'm looking at the next month and a half, right? Fortunately, I don't have any gigs that involve me going far away for a long period of time. Thank God. And I had a couple in December or something, which was good because I'm going to need them and they'll be when school's done. So, I decide I have to figure out what do I need for school. I already have a laptop and just normal stuff, but I'm going to need some pens and a couple of notebooks and just things like that. And what about textbooks and that kind of, where can I get the online versions just so I'm not carrying a heavy backpack and I can save money that way. And I'm starting to think a college student, and I don't know what that means yet. So there's a mandatory orientation you have to go to. And I honestly was scared about it because I just didn't know what to expect. And I haven't had that feeling in a long time. You could be you are performing in front of 2,000 people in an hour on no notice. You could be go do this show in front of 2,000. I'd be all right, fine. Yeah, let's go. And I'd do it. It would go fine and I would be fine and everything would be fine. It's fine. Go to an orientation where you have to sit in a room and listen to academics and professors and scholars and this and that and talk about the rigor of the Columbia curriculum and using words and college jargon lingo that I don't even know what it means. I just have to be okay, I don't belong here. Okay, this was a mistake. I'm going to be escorted off campus once they figure out it was a different Nick Youssef. Okay, I'm listening. Yeah, no. That's what I was going to be doing. I could already feel it in my bones. I was like, I don't know how to be a person anymore. I'm essentially going to feel like the nervous teenagers that are, feeling the exact same way. But at the same time, I was excited. I was ready to see what this new challenge, this new sort of side quest, or whatever, what it was going to be. Orientation, pretty straightforward. You go sit in a bunch of different sessions and you find out what it's going to be like to go to an Ivy League university. And they like to tell you that it's an Ivy League university and the rigor is real. They like to say Columbia is going to be the most difficult experience of your life and it's going to be rewarding and it's going to be all this. And I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I haven't been in a college classroom in 20 years. I didn't even do well when I was there. But then I had to remind myself, I go, okay, look, you walked into an open mic when you were 18 years old, knowing no one, knowing nothing, and you figured all that out with zero connections, zero education, zero friends, zero. I'm coming into a university setting with 25, almost 20 something years of life and career and just getting your ass kicked by the world and the entertainment industry experience. If I can weather all those storms, I can figure out how to survive some foreign language classes and some academic essay writing and some history and some science, and not only figure out, but thrive and just do well. But I knew it was going to be super hard. They're teaching a caliber of student that I am not. And I knew I had to really focus. I had to just laser focus on the assignments and the tasks at hand, and just almost like go into pre-panic mode. That's what it felt like. I was like, I already don't know. I already am going to fail is what I thought. So I have to get ahead of that feeling, that like kind of sink or swim, but I'm already sinking kind of feeling. And those orientation sessions were all that. I mean, they're really building this up, and they're like, this is going to be the hardest thing. You're supposed to feel like you don't belong here. That's normal. If this was easy, we wouldn't be doing our jobs. We're gonna challenge you. We're gonna make you feel like you can't handle this. That's the sort of thing they're pushing forward, but not in a way that is impossible. They're doing it. They're presenting you with like academic challenges and this whole rigor is real kind of thing. It like, because they believe you can get there. Like, you're a Columbia student, you are able to figure this out, but it is going to be the hardest thing that you've experienced. And for, these 17, 18-year-olds, it is going to be the hardest thing. Like, and you could hear them just sort of like, kind of, oh boy, like, high school wasn't like this. Like, they weren't being talked to this way. There weren't this many students. There wasn't these massive buildings steeped in history, and they weren't being faced with a brand new life yet, all that stuff. I'm like, I've been through it, all that pressure and all those different things. I was like, okay, it was more about like do I belong here? Just that part, which these teenagers and stuff have too, but I had that because I didn't come in here with a 4.3 GPA, honors roll, academic, everything, I mean, there are some smart kids going to that. I mean, there are 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that already are just leagues beyond 80% of the adults I know. In terms of just like their academic, their smarts, they are, people like to say like, oh, but I'm street smart and I'm whatever. They could figure that out in a fraction of the time. They will get out of school and they'll figure out the, day to day, the real world stuff quick. They are smart. That's what smart people do. So, and you can hear it in the way they speak. They speak like adults. They think things through. Like they've handled all this stuff. You put philosophy in front of them. You put, Middle Age history. You put like early American history. You put, logic, puzzles, and problems. I mean, they're just like, they're on it. They've been through it. It's like, what high school did you go to? They're teaching all this stuff. I went to some awful California public schools. They didn't teach any of this. I mean, they taught some of it. I was too busy causing problems. But anyway, orientation. We're sitting there and I'm in this like sexual harassment seminar. Here's all the things that you can and can't do. And if you see a problem, report it and all this stuff. And we're in this like beautiful old, like amphitheater style seating. Everything is wood and creaky, and they're giving this, serious speech, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I think this was in Spider-Man. This amphitheater, this classroom was in Spider-Man. That's really cool. This is cool. And then I'm like, okay, focus. This is serious. And I caught myself going like, hey, you got to take this seriously, which I do. I take that stuff seriously, but I'm like, yeah, you need to act like it. You need to be facing forward, and you need to be like, this is different. This is not casual. This is not like, I called my academic advisor by her first name as opposed to Mrs. and her last name. And it was like, I mean, not a good move. Like, I had to remember to call people professor instead of like, hey, Mr., excuse me, Professor so-and-so, or Dr. such and such, I don't live in that world. I live in, hey, idiot, like I call my friends and, people who are like, have great respect in the world of entertainment, fucking loser, that's how we say hi to each other. This is different here. There are people who are experts and leaders in their field, and they've gone to school 10 or 15 years. They've earned the title of professor or doctor or whatever, and they expect to be spoken to in a certain way. And it doesn't matter that I'm older than them. It doesn't matter that, nothing matters. None of it matters. What matters is you are in school now, and you are supposed to talk to your, not elders, but you're supposed to talk to your like academic elders in a respectful way. Unless they say otherwise. There's been a couple of professors that are like, you just call me John or whatever. And I remember there was a piece of advice that Al Franken got when he became a senator, because his go-to was comedy. There's your first thought or your instinct. He has comedic instincts, and it honed them for 30 whatever years. And he got a piece of advice from somebody that was like, and I'm probably botching the quote, but it was like, you know how your first instinct is to make a joke or be funny? Don't follow that instinct. Like, do not say the first thing that's coming to mind. So he had to train his mind in that setting, in the House of Representatives or Senate, whatever he was, to have the first thought, which would be an insult or some joke or something, swallow it, and then say something serious or say something that was appropriate. So I started thinking that way, because I knew I'd be in classrooms with people that I literally am old enough to be their fathers. That's where I'm at. There are students, there are kids. I mean, I look at these people and I'm like, those are children. There are children all around, and it's weird. So I have to not say anything inappropriate that would say around adults or at a comedy club, which is like, I mean, almost everything we say and joke around about is like not appropriate for these settings. And so I was like, orientation was me reorienting my own. I was doing my own orientation. They're talking about all these other things, like, and then you go, this is how you get to these buildings, and this building is this, and I'm like, don't say what I would say in a comedy club. We went to this one thing that was like this one session where they have like some professors that teach a bunch of core curriculum classes. So the Columbia Core is like basically just a long list of classes that you have to take that are mostly humanities courses and stuff to give you a sort of a well-rounded education outside of whatever you would choose as your major. You're going to have like literature humanities, which is just reading all of these amazing classics. There's contemporary Western civilizations, which is a year-long course that basically covers just the history of modern Western thought from Socrates to like yesterday. And then there's music humanities, going through all music from the early classical to modern stuff. Art humanities, same thing. All of art, all the amazing art. Scientific frontiers of science, all the recent developments in science and some of the foundations. I think there's a foundations of science class, stuff like that. You have to take those, and they are good they will teach you how to be a person in the world and engage with the world that you live in. That's the Columbia Core. And they talk about that at length at orientation. And there was a session where they had professors coming in, and then a few students that were like sophomore, senior, junior, whatever. And they discussed their experiences and what they liked and disliked. And I sat there and I was like, man, this is starting to feel real. This is like my interest is peaking on all these courses already, and I don't really know anything about them. But you could just hear the way these students were like, there was this guy who was I think he was a junior or a senior, and he was like, I knew what I was going to do when I transferred here. And he looked like he was about 30. He was an adult. And, he knew he was going to get into like Middle Eastern studies or whatever it was. But then he was just talking about how he was looking at these core classes, and wasn't sure why did he have to take them, but he was just so fascinated with how things were taught. And, he came from a different university. He wasn't like me, where he was, coming from the, sewers of the comedy world to like, academic excellence or whatever it was. But, so he was, surprised by the things he didn't even know he would like. And he was, talking about his favorite courses that were outside of what he was choosing as his major. And then there was another student who was talking about just being in the classrooms and sort of like, knowing that participation is important, but also knowing like, not to over participate, and just sort of like being aware of who's in the class too, because you have to consider that there are other people who are going to have some interesting ideas, and a lot of these seminar style classes are great for that. And not to necessarily, always like be the one who's talking. And then she said something really interesting that was like, sometimes you will notice that there are people who talk very, very little, but when they do talk, sometimes they'll say the most interesting thing that you heard that day or that week in that class. And then the person who does nothing but talk, doesn't really say anything interesting at all. They might be overcompensating. And it's funny because that's just how it works in the regular world. That's something that she had just sort of realized that year in school. She was younger, but I was like, yeah, all right. There are still going to be those moments. There are still those people. That's where people like that come from. All these rooms I've been in and all these different types of people I talk to, they're here too. A lot of them are just younger. They're figuring out these things. And then I went to a session on academic writing. And one of the core requirements, one of the classes, is you have to take university writing. And university writing is a semester-long class that basically teaches you how to write the academic essay. And I'd never written one. I've written tons of personal essays. I've written stuff for magazines. I've written journalistic style pieces. I've written personal essays. I've interviewed people. I've written jokes. I've written screenplays. I've written script, all this stuff. And then I'm thinking that'll give me a little bit of, confidence. And then I'm like, I'm back to square one again. Even the writing, something I can come in there knowing how to do. I was like, oh boy, what does it mean to write an academic essay? So I'm sitting in this class, and there's some doctor something who is, this foremost authority on writing and this and that, and went to Harvard and this and that, wrote a book on academic writing and all this stuff. And she's just giving this, lecture on what it's going to be like to write and what kind of writer are you, and, the nuts and bolts of academic writing. And I was like, I got to take this class semester one, because almost every class is going to have an essay. And I can already tell I don't know how to do it the way they want it, and the standards there are going to be astronomically high. So I knew right away, I'm like, I gotta take that class semester one. You have to take it year one, but I'm like, I need to take it semester one, because I'm probably not going to get good grades on these papers and stuff. And then we had orientation groups we were put into, and that was sort of just one of those get to know people. And we had this orientation leader who was just go get them, super positive, a lot of energy, happy to be here, happy you're here, that kind of thing. And he seemed nice, and he was talking about how he returned to school and he got a degree in something, and he started a career and realized, I don't want to do any of this anymore. And then he returned to school, and then he was a junior last year. And then other people kind of started talking, and they all had sort of similar things. And then I just felt like really uncomfortable. And I felt like, I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell people how old I am. I'm not going to tell people what I do for a living. And I just don't want, because everyone was talking on the same wavelength of like, oh, I went to this school. I went to Brown. I got my undergrad at Cornell, or I was over at, UPenn or whatever. And then I'm now here, I'm doing this, and I got a degree in that. And I do. And I was like, I'm going to be a wallflower. I'm going to keep quiet. I'm just going to listen. And I just sort of, in that moment, realized like I need to adopt that kind of stay back and just listen and absorb things. I'm not going to be like I am in the regular world. I'm not going to talk about my life and myself and what I do and all that stuff. It just didn't feel right. It felt like out of place, because I felt out of place. I don't know how right that feeling is now, but at the time, the last thing I wanted to do was bring up that I'm a professional comedian and writer. I didn't want to field questions about it. You can already these teenagers look at you like, who's this? Who's this guy? What, this guy's way older than us. Like, what is, and you can feel it. And it, that's fine. I don't feel like insecure about that, but I felt that it was there. So I was like, okay, I will keep that distance, that sort of like kind of weird look. That's fine. Have that. I'll stay over here until I sort of sort my own stuff out. So I just told myself I will, I'm not there to make friends, obviously, especially not with people half my age. So I was like, okay, that's fine anyway, because I'm not looking for that. I'm looking to keep my head down and study, because it's going to be super hard anyway. But I hadn't felt that uncomfortable and that out of place in, probably a decade and a half. I can't even remember the last time in maybe at like some party where it was just like all successful people and me, and I didn't belong there or something, or like at an audition, or my first time on a TV set or something. Maybe it was that for some on a commercial set, or like on a sitcom where I was playing like a guest part or whatever. I think that I was just like, I don't know how to be. I don't know what the terms are. Everyone back to one, and just TV lingo. I was just like, oh, that. I think that's the closest thing I can relate it to. The first time I was on like a TV set, and I just like, but the difference there was like that was part of the road to that. So I was like, I wanted to sort of get into that. As where this, I was like, I am coming as an outsider, and I'm not trying to get into the fold, and I'm sure plenty of people like that. There's people that are, I saw plenty of people walking around and they're like, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So I learned that in orientation. Just, I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to be serious. I'm not going to be joking around. I'm not going to, and I already knew not to sort of have that attitude or whatever in class. And classes hadn't even started yet, but it was pretty clear right away then in the first week of classes, which we'll get to, that's the right decision. But it's funny to even wonder. That's how long it's been since I've been in school. Like, well, I should probably not try and get a joke in here and there, right? Like, of course not. So orientation ends, and there's like a nighttime sort of thing. Like, there's pizza and something at this bar down the street, and blah blah whatever. And I'm like, none of that's for me. I'm not looking to network or join a frat or like any of that kind of stuff. So I went home. I had the weekend basically to finalize my first week or two of classes. There's a shopping period, they call it. over sign up for classes and try out what works and what doesn't, and then you drop what you don't like. This is obvious for most of anyone listening who went to college already. But so I was doing that. I was like, all right, I'll sign up for some things. Signed up for Arabic, signed up for university writing. I luckily got into that. I didn't get into the literature humanities or art humanities. Those things fill up instantly, even though they offer like 50 of them. And then I did an early American history class, 1491 to 1865. And they call it 1491 because that's like a signifier for everything that happened before the Columbus discovering the blah, blah, blah. So it was basically started from like the year 1000 or whatever, when the first people came to the Americas, all the way up to the end of the Civil War. So that I knew I was going to love. I love anything history anyway. And that was that. Those were the 3 classes, and I was excited to start. I was really nervous, and I felt as I was like walking around that campus at the end of that orientation and that whole weekend up until the first class on Monday, that I just didn't belong. I just had this feeling of like, am I really about to do this on Monday? Am I really about to walk in to Columbia University as a student and sit in a classroom and start learning things? And I was waiting all weekend to get this email that was like, hey, our bad. We actually meant to take a different Nick Youssef. Sorry. Or like, you know what? It was Nick Youssef, and we put the F in. It was Youssef. We're so sorry. We never heard that name either. But yeah, there's a guy, Nick Youssef, and it's him. It's not you. So see ya. Like something like that was in the back of my mind. A version of that was just there, and I was waiting for the phone call or waiting for the email or waiting for just the door to open and be like, that's the grab them. And they pull me. I don't know why they drag me out, but and it didn't come. And Monday I went to Arabic year 1, semester 1, first year Arabic, first semester. And that was it, man. That was like it was a small class, or like 10 or 12 people. It was in like a church, the building of a church in the Upper West Side. That was like the top few floors were like converted into classrooms and stuff. Couldn't even find it. I had to get there early to find it. And I remember getting there, and it was me and like 10 or 11 other students, and I think a few years apart from the professor in age, and 20 years older than every single student in that classroom. It was so weird. It was so weird being in a room of teenagers that I'm their dad's age. I probably have stuff in common with their dads. I'm probably the same age, maybe close to, as their parents, and they have like zits and stuff. It was like it was weird. So I was like, all right, well, this is gonna be it, man. This is like, I'm gonna be in classes with kids, and I'm gonna feel weird. It's just this like, I work in the regular world among adults. Like, where are their I don't see teenagers. It's like, it's weird. You're like, what are you doing here? And then it's like, no, I'm the one they're probably thinking, what's this guy doing here? And I remember feeling that in my second class, which was the American history class, where I was like sitting in the front row. That's the new me, by the way, is like when I was in high school and stuff, or in like community college way back, I was sitting in the back, I was sleeping. New Nick, Ivy League Nick, I'm front row. I mean, front row center, wherever the podium or the professor, front row, right in front of the professor. I'm locked in. I got my remarkable tablet that I'm taking notes on, That thing's a lifesaver, by the way, I use it for stand up and stuff, and on the road, and it's like a giant Kindle essentially it's just like a paper writing tablet. I mean, that thing is incredible for note taking and just writing on PDFs and for all these classes. Oh, dude, lightens the load. That thing is incredible. I'd had it since 2021 or something like that. But I mean, I can't even tell you how much I use that thing. But anyway, so I'm sitting there, remarkable out. I'm just eye on the professor. I'm like, let's learn, dude. Let's go. And I remember sitting there, and the first day of the history class, it was front row, and then the doors sort of like at an angle. And I remember waiting for the class to start. I got there early, and this child walks into the room. I mean, she was probably like, 17 or 18, but like anything under like 21 is just, you might as well be 7 to me, So like she walks in and she's just this like baby-faced baby person with a backpack and just pimples. And I was like, and I forgot I was in a classroom at a university. I thought I was like in a coffee shop or at a comedy club, And my reflex was to be like, oh, I mean, this poor girl's lost. How do we help her? Like that's my first thought, to be like, I'm sorry, what are you doing here? Like that's what I wanted to say, because I thought she was lost. I'm like, oh, we need to help her find her parents. Like that was my first, And obviously I didn't say anything, but I caught myself feeling that, and then I was like, oh no. No, that's you. You're that guy. She probably walked in going like, and that feeling was affirmed 2 minutes later when this dude walked in. He was like probably 19 or 20. He looked like he played some sport there, and he walks in and he was just like, looking around. A few more people had filtered in. Looks around, looks over at me and he goes, hey man, are you the TA? And I was like, no. And by the time I was about to be like, and he just goes, ugh, and he just turns around and walks off. And I was like, I'm the fish out of water. I'm the one who people are looking at like, what's that guy doing here? So I'm looking at them like, oh, these poor kids are lost. At least with 1 or 2 people I did that. And, I'm the one being looked at as like, oh, that must be the TA or the professor or some guy who's means to be walking to a cemetery to go lay down his final breath and die. And he's lost. We need to help him get to the cemetery. So yeah, and that was the first day, and the first feelings of what was to come, basically. And I think the episodes going forward, I want to talk more about just the stress and the pressure and kind of handling that, and just being and learning how to flip, the switch between like being in a serious, super serious academic setting with very serious people and very difficult subject matter and material, and just like like the gravity of it is just so like, it consumes you like instantly. And then flipping to like home life, hanging out with my girlfriend, doing shows and talking to my friends and family who I haven't told. I told maybe 2 or 3 people. I told immediate family, girlfriend, couple of best friends that this happened, and no one else. So then it was the inner sort of like battle of like, what do I do? When do I do this? Like, I have to sort of make it clear to myself that I can do this, that I'm not quitting stand up, and that I'm like I'm gonna make these 2 lives one, and I'm going to move forward bigger, better, stronger, and just like a new version of me. But like I said in the last episode, I barely knew what this meant still. It was still confusing and scary. I didn't fully realize what I was doing, and I had imposter syndrome all up and down, and the idea of telling anyone about it was almost scarier than the first day of class. And that feeling stuck with me throughout pretty much the first year. But we'll talk more about that next time.